I just really feel like sharing this information could help some of you guys too. Whether you're struggling with some sort of health problem, infertility or autoimmune problems, or whatever it is that you're struggling with. I'm just hoping that maybe this information about what we eat and what we put into our bodies, maybe that can help you too. From Eat, Pray, Crunch, and welcome to part 2 of the introduction to our diet. If you haven't already, check out part 1, I'll have that linked below, where I talk about kind of our history of health problems. We had severe male factor infertility. I have struggled with IBS for a lot of my life, and an autoimmune problem, and basically this diet has completely turned those around and almost completely healed those things. It's pretty incredible. Anyway, so if you haven't seen the background on that, I also talk about just the general idea of how this whole movement got started eating this way. Be sure to check out my video below. I've condensed the basic principles behind eating a real food, traditional diet down to 7 principles. And I'm just going to go over those 7 principles in this video. And then in following videos, I'm going to do one video each on each of those principles and elaborate on those a lot more and why they're important and how to go about eating that way, that kind of thing. So let's get started. Principle number 1, avoid processed food. This is the main thing. The whole idea behind eating a traditional diet, a real food diet, Weston A. Price diet, whatever you want to call it, it is to basically eat the way that our ancestors did before the advent of processed food. So eating the way that our great-grandparents did in generations before that. So what you can see is when you look throughout history is that a lot of the diseases of Western modern culture began when processed food came about. Now granted, there has always been heart disease, yes, there has always been cancer, but the rates of those diseases has skyrocketed basically since about the 1940s, which was about when processed food started gaining steam and became a big thing. And that's when you really saw these problems really increasing. Anyway, so the idea is to avoid processed foods and eat real whole foods. Principle number 2, and this is a principle that is kind of controversial, and it's basically that eating animal foods is important for human health. As humans, we are designed to have both plant foods and animal foods. Eating both of those types of foods is how we basically evolved to be as intelligent as we are and have brains as big as they are. Now this is a principle that is actually very similar to paleo. Actually, eating a traditional diet is almost exactly the same as a paleo diet, with the exception of 2 things, which is in a paleo diet you avoid all grains and legumes, but in this diet you do eat those things, but prepared in a certain way, which I'll talk about in a minute. Animal foods have nutrients in them that we can't get from plant foods alone. Granted, we do need to eat a lot of plant foods as well, so this isn't like just go eat meat only kind of diet, but this is an idea that animal foods need to be a significant part of the diet along with the plant foods. Basically, there are nutrients in animal foods that are more absorbable by the body than they are from plant foods. So the idea when we're eating animal foods is that we want to be getting them from animal sources that were raised eating the foods that they were evolved to eat. And when an animal is eating the foods that it's supposed to eat, its cells in its body are the healthiest they can be. The animal product that we are consuming has the highest density of nutrients in it because the animal was eating well. So basically you want to be getting animal foods that are local and organic, from small farms, free range. Like for example, you want to be getting like beef and dairy from cows that were on pasture eating grass, because that's what they were evolved to eat. And if you're eating chicken or eggs, you want those chickens to be able to exhibit their normal behaviors, like scratching in the dirt, eating bugs, eating plants, and the whole variety of things that chickens are meant to eat. So basically avoiding eating meat that was raised in a factory farm. Along with that, it's also really important to be eating organ meats. Now this is something that has become really passé. Nobody wants to eat liver and kidneys and all that anymore these days. It sounds disgusting to everyone, right? But actually, things like liver have the highest concentration of vitamin D of just about any food that you can possibly get. And we all know why vitamin D is important. I'll talk about that in a minute. And then in addition, the other products that come from those animals, milk and eggs, raw milk is a big thing when eating a traditional diet. That's how our ancestors ate it. They did not pasteurize it, they did not cook it. They just had very strict hygiene standards surrounding that. I will make a whole video on raw milk because I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, isn't raw milk like the most dangerous thing that you can consume? That is actually a myth, and I will talk all about that in my raw milk video. If you're getting it from a clean, reputable source that has excellent hygiene practices, it's actually safer than pasteurized milk. And also bone broth is another thing. It's a practice that we've really lost in our culture, is taking the bones from animals and boiling it down to get the marrow out of the bones, because the marrow is chock full of nutrients that we are really deficient in this culture actually. And then also just eggs. You want to get eggs from chickens that were pasture raised, meaning they were not just cage free, because if it's cage free then they could just be in a huge warehouse being fed corn all day. Chickens that were able to be outside pecking at the ground, scratching, eating bugs, that kind of thing. Another controversial idea that this diet promotes, and it kind of goes along with the idea that eating animal foods is important. But along with that, principle number 3 is fats are important in our diet. In the last 30 years, there has been so much push to eat a non-fat, low-fat diet, and it has come at an expense to our health. We have replaced eating natural fats like animal-based fats and whatnot with highly processed like vegetable oils, like margarine is a trans fat. We started creating trans fats, which are the worst possible thing that we could do for our body. Trans fats cause inflammation, they cause heart disease, all sorts of things. Whereas eating traditional, saturated, animal-based, and traditional plant-based fats are so important for our health as well. So basically you have to unlearn this idea that fat is bad, because that is not true. Trans fats, yes, those are bad, but naturally sourced fats are really important. The reason that they are so important is that they are chock full of the fat-soluble vitamins A, D, E, and K. As probably most of you know, it's gotten pretty wide press about the vitamin D problem. Most people in Western culture have a severe deficiency in vitamin D. In fact, I know I did. When I was going through my severe IBS and autoimmune problems, they tested me for vitamin D, and my levels were so low that I had to go on prescription strength vitamin D to bring my levels back up. But the idea is that it's not natural for us to be vitamin D deficient, and there's a myth that we're just inside all the time, we're not getting enough from the sun, but that's actually a myth. It is true that we should be spending probably a little bit more time in the sun, but really you can't get it all from the sun alone. And when you spend too much time in the sun, then there's the whole skin cancer problem. Basically, traditional cultures got their vitamin D from their food, and that food source is fat. mostly animal fats. And so when you're eating this kind of diet, you naturally get all of these fat-soluble vitamins from the animal foods that you're eating, through the fats in particular. And another interesting thing is it's actually important to pair plant foods with fats as well, with natural fats. For example, there's a reason why we traditionally put butter on our vegetables, like our cooked vegetables. And that's because when you pair them with a fat, the fat helps the fat-soluble vitamins that are in the vegetable be more available to the body. It helps you absorb the vegetable better when you have it with a fat. So anyway, this was a huge revelation to me. I never even thought about like the reason why everybody is so vitamin D deficient and everything, but I never thought about that it's because we are eating a low-fat, non-fat diet, and the fats that we are eating are from animals that are very unhealthy, factory farm animals. You're not going to get the same levels of these vitamins from unhealthy animals. It has to be coming from healthy animals. So some examples of traditional fats to eat are good old-fashioned butter. And not just any butter, but going with the same principle as I talked about before, butter that comes from milk that comes from cows raised eating grass, that were raised on pasture, because that butter is going to be chock full of natural vitamin D that comes from the grass and went through the cow and is now in the milk. So butter is a big one. And there are some other ones that not so many people have access to these days, but they're still good sources. Lard, I know that that has a horrible connotation now. That is actually chock full of these important vitamins as well, if it's from a healthy animal. Beef tallow is another example. That's a lesser known one. You can get these vitamins from plant fats as well. And those would be nuts and olive oil, and coconut oil is another major one. Coconut oil, I could do a whole video just on how amazing coconut oil is and how good it is for us, for all of those reasons I was just talking about. Principle number 4, I think everybody agrees on this principle, but eat your fruits and veggies. While it is so important to have animal foods in our diet, it is just as important to have these plant foods too. Fruits and vegetables, we want to eat lots of them, cooked and fresh. We also want those to be coming from a source that are as close to nature as possible. Grown in naturally fertile soil, so eating organic is really important when it's possible to do so, because the soil it's growing in is not dead and it's not destroyed by all of the pesticides and herbicides and all of that. So that's why eating fruits and vegetables, when possible, it's really important to eat organic. Principle number 5. Along with eating our fruits and vegetables, it's really important to also get greens, nuts, and legumes. Now, this is the one principle that makes this diet different from paleo, is that in a traditional diet, they did eat a lot of greens and nuts and legumes. But the caveat with that is that the way our ancestors ate those, there was a process that they put these grains through to make them more digestible and absorbable to the body. And that process was to either soak the grains or sprout the grains. There is what they call an anti-nutrient in a lot of grains and legumes called phytic acid. And this phytic acid can cause a lot of inflammation in the body and other various health problems as well. So it's interesting that our ancestors knew to do, they didn't know about phytic acid, they didn't know about all this. It was just this traditional wisdom that they had to soak and sprout grains, nuts, and legumes. You may have seen in the store like sprouted bread, sprouted tortillas, that kind of thing. That's why people eat that, is because it makes the nutrients more absorbable by the body and you're not getting that phytic acid in your body. When I say soaked is like, for example, if you're, a really traditional food is porridge, right? Eating like oatmeal, for example. And so the way our ancestors did that traditionally, interesting enough, was overnight they would soak the grains in water and some sort of acidic medium, just a little splash of acidic medium. That could be vinegar, it could be whey from their milk, or lemon juice, something like that. and just let it sit overnight, and it would break that stuff down, and in the morning they would cook it up and they would have their porridge. Also, similar to paleo is this idea that we do actually eat too many grains in our culture. While in the traditional diet, you know, we don't avoid grains completely, we do eat them in moderation. So instead of having meals that are entirely based on grains all the time, you try to make them more of like a side thing and just eat them as more of a sometimes food rather than grains being the main part of our diet. It's still important for us to eat them, but we want to be eating less of them. Principle number 6. Now this is an important one. Avoid all refined grains and sugar. Sugar. We want to avoid sugar. Refined sugar, that is. This is one of the main things that Dr. Weston A. Price found when he was doing his studies, was that when he actually went back to some of these cultures a few years later and saw that when Western food started coming into their diet, when they were more exposed to Western culture, one of the main things they started eating a lot more of was sugar. And the same people that he had seen before who had perfect, healthy, straight teeth and really healthy bone structure, they started having tooth decay and all of these problems that they had never had before. And sugar was a huge component of that. So that is a huge principle in this diet, is avoiding refined sugar. And along with that, refined grains, because refined grains actually, when they are digested by the body, turn into sugar. So it has the same effect basically as eating sugar. And what I mean by refined grains is like white pasta, white bread, all that kind of thing. So basically, when it comes to grains, like I said in principle number 5, you want to be eating whole grains that are either soaked or sprouted. And when it comes to sweetening things, because we're not, we don't want to completely give up on having sweet things in our lives, right? But avoiding refined sugar, avoiding white sugar, avoiding the corn syrup, all of those highly processed sugars, and getting back to eating really basic unrefined sugars such as raw honey or like pure maple syrup. But another even better alternative is stevia. It is a natural plant that actually has no effect on your glycemic index at all. It's not actually a sugar, it just tastes sweet to us, and it's totally natural. That is actually the main sweetener that we use in our house, is stevia. And last but not least is consuming lots of fermented foods and probiotics. This is huge. I think this principle is the main part that healed my IBS problem. So along with processed food, we also became a lot more germophobic in our culture, which is good to some extent. Like, it's good that we have much better hygiene than we used to, right? But along with that, we also started sterilizing our food so much that we stopped consuming good bacteria as well. And so this is a rampant problem in Western society, is that people have a completely imbalanced gut flora, meaning their intestines are basically overpopulated with bad bacteria because they are not eating enough good bacteria or probiotics to help keep the bad bacteria in check. That is the whole idea behind eating fermented foods, is that you are getting those probiotics into your gut through the food that you eat. And I know that was probably the single biggest thing that was making my IBS so bad, is that I was eating things that were feeding the bad bacteria and wreaking havoc on my whole system because of that. So changing to this diet totally turned that around. So probiotics, eating fermented foods are so important. I could just think of a whole slew of health problems that people have because they have an imbalanced gut flora. But I'll do a whole video just on the importance of probiotics and fermented foods upcoming. So that is it. Those are the 7 condensed principles that I came up with to kind of explain this diet in a nutshell. Like I said before, starting to eat this way totally changed our lives. It really did, for the better. We healed our infertility problem. My IBS almost completely went away, and my autoimmune problem has significantly reduced, and has actually the problem in my nails, I've actually started growing them back. It's healing. It's not completely better, but eating this way has really helped. I really think that me coming across this information was really a God thing. I really feel like God led me to this information for that reason, because it changed our lives so much in a really important way. And I just really feel like sharing this information could help some of you guys too. Whether you're struggling with some sort of health problem, infertility or autoimmune problems, or whatever it is that you're struggling with. I'm just hoping that maybe this information about what we eat and what we put into our bodies, maybe that can help you too. That's one of the main reasons I wanted to start this channel, was to talk about this very thing, and just talking about the importance of food in our lives and how it's so deeply related to our health. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to hit the thumbs up button, and if you want to see more on this series, I will, like I said before, I'll be doing one video on each of these principles, going into a lot more depth and talking about specifically which kinds of foods you can eat, like ideas for how to shop for these foods, ideas for how to prepare these kinds of foods, that kind of thing, and where to even get them a lot of the time. So anyway, if you'd like to see more on that, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. If this is your first time watching, I also have a pregnancy vlog series for baby number 2. This is the fruit of our changed diet, actually, is this little baby right here that we just got pregnant so easily the second time around after having severe fertility struggles before. So yeah, if you want to see more videos of the like, be sure to hit the subscribe button, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye!